Welcome back to another episode of Learning to Build StudyMedHK. The video you are watching now was filmed at least 3 weeks before the last video was recorded. Like I said in the last video, I've just been spending so much time fine-tuning and designing the website. Now that I know that the essential functionality is there, that has taken up a lot more time and effort than I thought it would. So I was actually completely wrong last video when I said the design part was the easy part. So from where I was last video to where I am now, there were a few major obstacles that I had to tackle. The first one was the design. This proved to be a lot harder than what I thought it would take, because designing a website is not just being able to actually come up with the design, which in itself is very difficult, but also being able to implement it in a way that most closely fits the idea that you came up with, because you can't always exactly reproduce whatever it is that you have in your mind, is also very, very tough. The second one was that I wanted to be able to create a sort of membership feature that suited the way I wanted to run the website. Eventually, if this website turns into a proper, legitimate learning platform, I would hopefully want this website to be able to be self-sustaining, in the sense that I don't have to be the one that's paying for the maintenance fees every single year. So I wanted to create a way of being able to control who is allowed to make an account on this website, because potentially in the future, I may have to ask for very nominal fees when people join, for example, 5 Hong Kong dollars, in order for me to be able to have enough money to keep this website running and potentially be able to pay for the more premium features that some of the other plugins may provide. And with this membership thing, the easiest way for me to control who gets in and who doesn't is just simply completely banning people from registering their own accounts, and then making me the only person that can actually help people register accounts for them. This was definitely not the way to go, and it wasn't something that I actually ever considered, because that would be so time consuming if I had to type in all the membership information for every new individual that wanted to come in, and that I would have to do it for them. And this is where the first plugin comes into play. I got this first plugin called Ultimate Member, and this plugin gives me the ability so that people could register accounts, but just because they've registered doesn't mean they get access to my account. I still have to approve them from the back end of this website. Back end means the side that only the administrator can access and take control of. So this also wasn't as easy as it sounded, because I originally didn't know that this plugin had that specific feature, and I tried another one and had a lot of troubleshooting with regards to manipulating a bit of code, because some of the problems I was facing with the older plugin was that even though people registered and still had to wait for approval before they could access the website, when people registered to the website, they would automatically be logged in when they click the register button, and this would give them straight access to the courses and the questions until they logged out. So if they logged out, they wouldn't be able to log in again because their account was pending approval. But the bug would happen when they first registered an account and didn't log out, and they would stay logged in and have access. So this is where I had to learn something called HTML, which is one of the coding languages that I spoke of last video, which is essentially the code that is used to design the core content that you want for the website. For example, where you want to put the text, where you want to put the images, where you want your title to be, and what happens when you click on a new link, and what happens when you click on the register button. This is really what HTML does. I had to learn very specific parts of this huge coding language in order for me to actually be able to overcome that small challenge, which in the end didn't even need to be overcome, because I realized that the Ultimate Member plugin had similar features that could help me achieve this functionality as well. Speaking of coding, HTML was actually not the only code that I had to learn in the process of making this website. There is also another language, as mentioned in the last video, called CSS. CSS is different to HTML in the sense that HTML is to set down the core layout of the website. For example, saying that I want a menu at the top, a paragraph in the middle, and a subtext at the bottom, followed by an image with another button that takes you to another thing. This is what HTML does. What CSS does is that it helps me tweak and configure these items that I've placed down through my HTML. For example, I can design and reconfigure what the button looks like, whether or not there are any animations when I hover over it, and whether or not the image is centered in the container that it's being contained in. So one is more for what I would think as the core substance, and the other is more for decoration. If you were watching the last video, you might be thinking that I already mentioned that there's this very powerful tool called Elementor, and it is probably one of the most used plugins on WordPress to allow users to easily configure the way their website looks, just like you would on a PowerPoint. The problem with this was that this plugin would not work with all the pages within this website. Why is that the case? Because if you remember, I also used something called a Sensei LMS plugin, LMS standing for Learning Management System, which is the plugin that allows me to create these courses and these lessons and these quizzes within those lessons that are marked and can be randomized and have all these sort of learning functions within them. The problem was because these pages, which contain the quizzes and the lessons and the courses, were run and handled by the LMS plugin rather than the website itself. This meant that I was unable to use Elementor to edit those pages. So before I explain why I needed CSS to specifically customize these pages within these courses and these lessons, let me give you a quick look at what the website looks like at the moment. So before I show you what the new website looks like, let me just quickly show you what the original design was like. This was the original design. I tried going for, and I still am going for, a sort of minimalistic design because I feel like that's in fashion rather than the old styled pages where you were just bombarded with lots of different buttons and menus, which would be very confusing. Here, the initial plan was just to have this top bar with all the menus and home buttons and login buttons, and then this big block here that was introducing what this website is for newcomers, and then everything would be arranged in these layers of sections. What I didn't like about this design was that although it was minimalistic, these sort of boxy sections that separated all these different content just didn't seem very young and new to me. I wanted something that would look a bit more seamless, and that also took up quite a bit of time for me to come up with how I would go about doing a more seamless design. And this is what the website looks like now. Just like I said, the transition zones between the different sections now look a lot more seamless in my opinion because it's no longer that straight line. And there is also a sort of continuum in terms of the color scheme that runs from one section to the other. For example, the fade in dark to light blue continues throughout the page, which I think helps bring in that integrated seamless design. And at the moment, I am quite happy with the way this looks for the beta version of my website, although there's plenty of room for a lot of tweaking to come in. If you compare the general theme of this website to what my courses and quizzes pages looked from the last video, I would say that there's quite a big discrepancy in the styles that they are designed in. So I had to use CSS to be able to modify those pages within the courses rather than being able to simply go on Elementor, click on the background, change it to green, make the boxes look rounder, change the text to be in the center, and all those other things, because those pages controlled by the LMS plugin just wouldn't allow Elementor to be used because of some problems that I don't know of. And not only did I have to learn what CSS was, I also had to learn how to input the CSS into my website, because when you're using WordPress, you don't actually have all the files of the website at your direct disposal. You actually need to know how to look for them. And there are also a lot of additional files, I think, made by WordPress that help produce this big content management system that gives me access to everything easily, which complicates their database that contains everything to do with this website. So I ended up again using a different plugin, this time called Code Snippets, which is a plugin that allows me to write specific snippets of code in order to have them incorporated with all the junk and files that exist on the database without having to interfere or manipulate any of the code in the existing files that serve as the backbone for this whole website, because I didn't want to break anything and just end up losing the whole website and all the things that I've spent time working on. And if you have a look at here, you can see that these are all the different little bits of CSS that I've had to manually learn to write and had to learn to do a lot of trial and error with in order for me to create very specific looks within those features. And I even use CSS to customize what the login page looks like to a way that I think just brings everything together and keeps the theme consistent. So now I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons of what the website looked like before and after I went through all of this CSS learning and implementing it onto my website. So now that we have the login system there and we have the design in place, I had to now focus on the questions. I designed 100 orthopedic questions for the Year 4 syllabus for us med students at HKU to begin with, and the first thing I had to figure out was how I wanted to arrange and organize these questions. With just 100 questions, it's really not that difficult, and it doesn't really require much thinking as to how to arrange those questions, because it's quite easy to group these 100 questions within themselves. And the problem is, because I foresee more people helping out with creating more questions with more specialties, which also have their respective subtopics within them, I had to come up with a way that allows me to be able to easily set specific types of questions within specific specialties to be present in specific quizzes for users to be able to tailor-make which specific topics they would want to revise on that specific day. And in this initial try, I started categorizing all my questions by their specialty. As you can see here, all of these questions are categorized by orthopedic, and the next thing I had to do was categorize them by the specific subtopics that I have within orthopedics. For example, I decided that joint pain should be its own subtopic, trauma should be its own subtopic, pediatric orthopedic should be its own subtopic. And then I also added a third layer of categories, which is the number 4, representing the content from our 4th year of med school. I am now able, when I create those online quizzes, to set that quiz to specifically show questions from the whole of orthopedics, from the whole of trauma within orthopedics, or just fourth year content within trauma from orthopedics, or even just all trauma within orthopedics across different year groups, but none of the other subtopics. By arranging my questions within these umbrella terms, I've been able to really specify what type of questions I want in each of the quizzes that I make. This may be a bit confusing right now, but when you watch the demonstration video, it will make a lot more sense as to why I decided to categorize my questions this way. And with a lot more tweaking and troubleshooting, after almost a month of just non-stop working at this website without really taking any days off, have been able to finally create what I'm happy to call the beta version of this website. And will from here proceed to trying to contact and find more doctors and people to help me with in order to expand this question bank. So in this new pop-up that you see now on the screen, please feel free to check out the demonstration video that I've made. The tone of that video is a bit more serious than this one because it's the same video that I will be sharing with doctors in order for them to get an idea of what this website is like. And that is it for this video. I'm really excited with the amount of progress I've been able to make in the last month. I'm not sure I would exactly call this stressful, but I did spend a lot of time just thinking about this thing even when I wasn't working on it. So it's good to see that there is some progress, and I'm just really happy that I was willing to commit to a mere idea that I had a week ago, which might now have a lot more potential to turn into something bigger. So now that the core features of the website are in and it looks good enough where I think it's very presentable, I will move on to sort of the second phase of this whole project and starting to find and build a team that will help me out with this. So thank you for watching this video. Again, there's another pop-up right now for the demonstration video, and please check it out. I'm very proud of it, and thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.